While there are peaceful demonstrators, many protests across the country have also turned into riots with fires ignited, windows smashed, and here in the South Bay, at least one officer hurt. This was all sparked by the death of George Floyd over in Minneapolis, who was killed during an arrest, as protesters demand policing that doesn't end in death. Joining me is Norris. He's the executive director of Ella Baker Center in Oakland for some perspective. Thanks for talking with us.
No problem. Thank you.
So your organization fights for the rights of Black and brown communities. Before all the violence, of course, there was a peaceful uproar from all types of people in response to this latest death of a Black American in police custody. How important is that support from all backgrounds?
I think the first thing to understand is that Black people are tired of dying in this country. We are dying from COVID. We are dying from malnutrition. We are dying from hunger. And people who are basically just trying to survive are being killed by the police. And so this incident is really just indicative of a larger society that has shown that it values property and the property of powerful people more than it values Black lives. And I think that's why you see the anger, the frustration in cities across the country.
And you often hear people comment that it's 2020, this shouldn't be happening. What do you think it's going to take in order to get that message across? And unfortunately, people now feeling like they need to resort to violence consistently over the years in order to try to make that come to an end.
Well, I think, it was Dr. King who said those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And the levels of frustration with a nation that has consistently devalued Black and brown lives since its inception must change and must end. And quite frankly, we need to see a defunding of the systems that have produced Black deaths and produced the death of Black and brown persons in this country, and to see real funding for the kind of public health infrastructure that would be valuable not just for Black and brown people, but frankly for all people in this country who are suffering and dying from poverty, malnutrition, and from COVID-19. And so that has to be changed. That is not just about one person being killed by the police. As precious as the life of George Floyd is, we need to see systemic change in cities across this country and in towns and in the country as a whole.
We are seeing some of those cities on fire as we speak over in Minneapolis at, of course, the area where this happened and Floyd's life was taken. But what is your message to people, including here in the Bay Area, that have escalated to smashing glass, shutting down highways, and assaulting officers?
I would say I completely understand your anger and frustration, and I understand why people are so upset. And quite frankly, I don't think that destruction of property is what people should be focused on. The theft of billions of dollars from our economy into the highest, most powerful hands. The president of the United States saying, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, really sends a clear message to Black and brown communities across this country that their lives are less valuable than the property of powerful people. And that is insane. That is immoral. That is unjust. And it is unconscionable. So I stand with people who are saying, we've had enough. We need a society where everyone is taken care of, where when the police being called doesn't end in a police officer putting their knee on someone's neck for 8 minutes while three other officers stand by and watch, while passerbys who are videotaping saying, please, please, please. And he is saying, please stop. You're killing me. I can't breathe. That is unjust. It is unconscionable. And quite frankly, any news media outlet that is focused on broken windows is missing the larger point of the injustice that is unconscionable in this country and is ongoing. And we saw the same response in Ferguson, where I stood in the streets and was with protesters standing. Um, and the same response in the 1960s when little Bobby Hutton was killed in Oakland, California. And so, quite frankly, it's 2020, and we don't need just an officer discipline, and we don't need news outlets telling us to stay peaceful. We need systemic change, and we need it now.
And this is a reoccurring conversation. It seems that little, if anything, has changed, which is why we are seeing this outpour and outrage. But this is also eerily reminiscent of the events in the last election year, 2016, when coincidentally protests turned violent in the aftermath of two other black men, Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, who died in Louisiana and Minnesota. Are you just tired of this conversation continuing?
I am tired of uh, Black lives being devalued, and this isn't just a problem in Louisiana or Minnesota. It's a problem right here in the Bay Area, where just less than a month ago, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors approved $100 million to the Alameda County Sheriff. This is the sheriff's office that has retweeted the alt-right, that has hosted an alt-right wing formation called the Oath Keepers. They have been responsible for dozens of deaths in the last 5 years. And the Board of Supervisors just said, here, have $100 million every year for 3 more years. And what kind of message does that send? It sends the message that Black lives and brown lives are less valuable, that our communities are to be controlled and contained rather than supported in ensuring that we have as much access to safety, to health, as any other community. It can no longer continue, and that's why people are in the streets across the country.
And as the executive director of the Ella Baker Center in Oakland, what have you seen in recent years, and what do people of our communities come to you with as their major concerns?
People come to us with concerns about inadequate, under the context of COVID, inadequate testing, people disproportionately contracting COVID-19. They come to us because they're being criminalized for being homeless. They come to us because they're being criminalized in their schools, and their schools are being shut down. And so, what we have been effectively saying for so long is we need public health solutions to public health issues. We need to actually resource the kinds of interventions that make communities the most safe, and that is when people have access to good jobs, when they have access to education, um, and rather than being forced back to work, as some of these white supremacists, frankly, when they went to state capitals armed to the teeth. No one was hurt, no one was killed, and the president of the United States, quite frankly, praised them. And so, rather than people being pushed back to work into unsafe conditions, people have had enough of their lives being valued less than the economy doing well. And so, we're saying that we need massive investment in communities across this country to ensure that everyone has adequate health care, that they have access to decent jobs where they can be paid living wages, and they have access to good schools where their children have a bright future ahead of them. That's what makes communities safe. Communities are fed up with the idea that police are keeping the streets safe. That is the actual opposite of what we're seeing in cities across this country. And so we, quite frankly, need real systemic change in this country.
Well, thank you so much to social justice advocate Zach Norris of Oakland for joining us and talking about this really serious matter, and hopefully we don't have to meet under these circumstances again.
Thank you.
You're watching Chron on the Bay Area streaming news 24/7.